2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Security camera alert. There was Patricia Whitmore, our HOA president, using bolt cutters on the padlock to my root cellar. Flashlight in one hand, designer purse over her shoulder, she stepped right into the cellar I built myself after a back injury ended my Marine Corps career. She thought nobody was watching. But I'd been waiting for months. It started with violation notices for grass 0.1 inches too tall, threats of daily fines, and demands to tear down my unauthorized structure on land my family's owned for 3 generations. She even bragged she'd make an example out of the non-compliant veteran. Tonight, she finally crossed the line and walked straight into the trap I'd set. Let's just say it ended with trouble she couldn't talk her way out of. What would you do if your power-tripping HOA president broke in like this? Drop your location too. I want to know where you're watching from. Share your wildest HOA story below, because this one gets ice cold. My name's Marcus Sullivan, Mac to anyone who matters. And before I tell you exactly how Patricia Whitmore ended up trapped in my root cellar at 3 in the morning, you need to understand the kind of woman we're dealing with. I'm 52, disabled Marine living on VA benefits in Millbrook Heights, Kentucky. This used to be farmland before developers carved it into a subdivision, but my 3 acres sit right in the middle. The stubborn holdout that refused to sell when they came waving checkbooks 15 years back. Built my root cellar 2 years ago after my back injury ended my construction career. Took me 8 months working 15-minute intervals between pain flares, but I got it done. Proper foundation, ADA compliant ramp, temperature control, the works. That underground space holds my independence. $800 worth of preserved vegetables, canned goods, everything that keeps me eating well when the VA check runs thin. The smell down there. Cool earth, mason jar rubber, that satisfying mustiness of self-reliance. That's what freedom smells like when you've learned not to depend on anyone else. Then Patricia Whitmore moved into the neighborhood and decided my freedom was her business opportunity. Patricia's 48 years old, been HOA president for 6 straight years, real estate shark who drives a white BMW with vanity plates reading "Sold for You." Always has fresh acrylics that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Always smells like perfume with some French name I can't pronounce. Her husband Randy's the county commissioner, which she drops into every conversation like it's legal immunity. And maybe it was, until she picked the wrong target. First contact came on a Tuesday morning in March. I'm outside checking my tomato seedlings when I hear designer heels clicking on gravel like a countdown timer. Turn around to find Patricia in a power suit, clipboard clutched like a weapon, staring at my cellar entrance like it had personally insulted her mother. "Mr. Sullivan, Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, we need to discuss your situation." She handed me a violation notice on official letterhead. Unsightly agricultural structure diminishing neighborhood property values. $50 fine, 30 days to remove. The morning sun caught her wedding ring. Easily 2 carats, probably worth more than my truck. Everything about Patricia screamed money and authority, from her manicured fingernails to her BMW's paint job that gleamed like liquid mercury. I read the notice twice, then looked at her. "Ma'am, this cellar was built 2 years ago. Your HOA incorporated last year. Doesn't that grandfather my structure?" Her smile went sharp enough to cut glass. "Not according to current community standards, Mr. Sullivan. We're elevating this neighborhood's profile. I'm sure someone with your background understands the importance of following proper procedures." The way she said background, like my military service was something embarrassing she had to acknowledge. That expensive perfume lingered for 10 minutes after she left, cloying and artificial, like everything else about Patricia Whitmore. But here's what Patricia didn't know. Marines don't just fold when civilians try to intimidate them. We document, we prepare, and we wait for the perfect moment to strike back. The harassment started immediately. Week 2 brought a grass violation, measured at 3.1 inches, when subdivision limit was 3.0. $75 fine, photographic evidence attached. My lawn looked like a golf course compared to half the yards in Millbrook Heights, but Patricia had found her angle of attack. Week 3. Mailbox paint faded and unsightly, and another 75. Week 4, garden hose visible from street, creating impression of negligence, 75 more. By month 2, I owed Patricia's HOA $425 in fines for violations that didn't exist until she needed them to. But the money wasn't the real problem. It was the pattern I started recognizing. Patricia was studying my property like a general studies enemy terrain. She'd walk my fence line with that clipboard, taking measurements, checking sight lines from the road to my cellar. Too much time photographing my ramp, my ventilation system, especially the lock on my cellar door. That's when I realized Patricia Whitmore wasn't just power tripping. She was planning something bigger than harassment fines. April brought Patricia's first real escalation, professional intimidation disguised as official business. I was having morning coffee when a county pickup truck pulled into my driveway. Two guys in hard hats climbed out, one with a clipboard that looked like a twin to Patricia's, one with a camera that probably cost more than my monthly disability check. "Mr. Sullivan?" "Tom Bradley, County Building Inspector. We received a complaint about unpermitted construction on your property." The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with morning dew as Tom's partner started photographing my cellar entrance. Not just quick snapshots, detailed documentation from multiple angles, measuring distances to property lines, checking structural details that had nothing to do with safety violations. What construction would that be? Underground storage facility. Need to verify it meets current county safety codes. I stepped onto my porch, coffee mug warming my hands against the morning chill. Tom Bradley looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, kept glancing at his clipboard like the answers might magically appear. But his photographer buddy was working with the methodical precision of someone conducting a professional survey. "You got paperwork for this inspection?" "Complaint-driven inspection doesn't require advance notice, sir. Just need a quick look inside." Here's the thing about being a Marine. You learn to spot bullshit from 1,000 yards. Tom's safety inspection was taking way too many photos of sight lines, measuring distances from my cellar to the road, documenting everything except actual safety concerns. This wasn't code enforcement. This was reconnaissance. "Tell you what, Tom, call me this afternoon. We'll schedule something proper with advance notice." His face went red like a boiled lobster. "Sir, we can do this easy or we can do it hard, but we're doing our job today. And I'm doing mine, which is protecting my property rights. You want access to my cellar? Bring a warrant." They left 15 minutes later, but not before Tom's photographer mapped every inch of my property with that expensive camera. I counted 47 photos for a quick safety check. That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse. The building smelled like old wood and bureaucratic indifference as I spent 30 minutes digging through public records, no inspection request filed by any neighbor. But there was something else. A development application submitted by Whitmore Holdings LLC for a mixed-use residential project pending land acquisition. The proposed site? 5 acres including my property. Patricia wasn't trying to force me out with harassment. She was conducting market research for a $500,000 land grab. Every violation notice, every inspection threat, every official visit was reconnaissance for a development project that required my cellar to disappear. When someone's trying to steal your land, they study it better than you do. That's what my uncle always said after losing 40 acres to a water rights dispute in the 80s. Developers send inspectors and surveyors months before filing paperwork, mapping every obstacle to future profits. Tuesday brought round 2, utility company harassment. "Mr. Sullivan? Eddie Martinez, Kentucky Power. We received a safety complaint about unpermitted electrical work at your address." Eddie looked about as enthusiastic as Tom Bradley had. Young guy probably just following orders from someone higher up the bureaucratic food chain. His work truck idled in my driveway while he read from a tablet that definitely didn't contain any real electrical concerns. What kind of safety complaint? Extension cord running to underground structure, potential fire hazard. The morning air smelled like fresh-cut grass and coffee breath as Eddie leaned closer to read his script. "Need to verify you've got proper permits for that wiring." "Eddie, that's not an extension cord. That's buried electrical cable, properly installed with permits from 1998. 20 minutes later, I returned with a folder thick as a phone book. Original electrical permits signed by the county electrical inspector in 1998. Copy of approved construction plans. Photos of the installation process, back when my uncle first built the structure. Eddie's face went through several expressions as he flipped through the documentation. Confusion, recognition, then something that looked like embarrassment. "Sir, these permits are comprehensive. Whoever filed that complaint didn't know what they were talking about. Whoever filed that complaint knew exactly what they were doing." But Wednesday brought the real revelation. I was reviewing security footage from the past week when I noticed something interesting. Patricia's BMW had been making regular drive-bys every Tuesday and Friday at exactly 6:15 p.m. But Tuesday night was different. She'd parked 3 houses down and walked back, staying in shadows, testing my cellar's padlock with her manicured fingers. Just for seconds, but enough to confirm what every Marine learns about enemy behavior. When someone conducts reconnaissance, they're planning an assault. I called my neighbor, Diesel Rodriguez. "Brother, remember that security upgrade we talked about? I need it installed before this weekend." "You expecting trouble?" "I'm counting on it." May brought Patricia's psychological warfare campaign, and she played it like a master manipulator who'd been destroying lives since high school. The first attack came through my mailbox. Anonymous letter typed on plain white paper. No signature, just pure poison designed to make me question my own sanity. "Your neighbors are talking. Military service doesn't excuse antisocial behavior. Some people think you might be dangerous. Maybe it's time to move somewhere more suitable for your condition." The paper smelled like cheap copy machine toner and malicious intent. Patricia was too smart to sign her name, but the timing was perfect. Delivered the day after I'd refused her latest inspection request. She was escalating from official harassment to personal intimidation, but the real genius was in what she didn't say directly. No specific threats, no actionable language that could be traced back to her. Just the suggestion that mysterious neighbors were concerned about the dangerous veteran living in their midst. Thursday brought escalation number 2, social surveillance disguised as community concern. I was working in my garden when Mrs. Henderson from next door approached, looking uncomfortable as a cat in a thunderstorm. "Mac, I hope you don't mind me asking, but Patricia mentioned you might be struggling with some issues related to your service?" The afternoon heat made everything shimmer like a mirage, including Mrs. Henderson's nervous smile as she delivered Patricia's carefully crafted message. "What kind of issues?" She said veterans sometimes have difficulty adjusting to civilian life. Mentioned your cellar project, suggested it might be unhealthy to spend so much time underground. Patricia was weaponizing my neighbor's genuine concern, turning my disability into a liability, my independence into evidence of mental instability. Classic manipulation. Use people's kindness against your target. "Mrs. Henderson, did Patricia suggest you talk to me about this?" Her face flushed red as summer roses. "She mentioned it might be helpful if someone checked on you, as a neighbor." "I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing fine. Patricia's been trying to force me off my property for 2 months. This is just her latest strategy." But the damage was planted. Patricia had successfully introduced doubt about my mental stability into neighborhood conversations. Even if Mrs. Henderson believed me, the seed was there. The idea that the disabled veteran might be unstable, might be dangerous. Friday brought the health department, weaponizing government bureaucracy with surgical precision. "Mr. Sullivan, Brenda Hayes, County Health Inspector. We've received reports of potential food safety violations at your address." Brenda looked like she'd rather be inspecting restaurant kitchens than harassing disabled veterans, but she had a job to do and Patricia had given her the script. "What kind of violations?" "Unlicensed food storage and preservation, potential unsanitary conditions in underground facility." The morning sun was already heating up the asphalt, making Brenda sweat through her county uniform as she clutched her clipboard like a shield against the awkwardness of this obvious setup. "Brenda, it's called a root cellar. People have been storing food this way for centuries. Still need to inspect the facility, make sure it meets current health codes." I led her to the cellar entrance, keyring jingling in the morning quiet. Opening that door released the familiar cool air, scented with earth and preserved vegetables, the smell of competence and self-sufficiency. Brenda stepped inside cautiously, flashlight beam dancing across neat rows of mason jars, properly labeled and dated. Her expression shifted from official suspicion to genuine admiration as she documented my canning setup. "This is actually quite impressive," she admitted. "Temperature control, proper ventilation, organized storage systems. Built it myself after my back injury. Helped stretch the grocery budget." She spent 20 minutes photographing everything, checking dates on preserved goods, testing my temperature monitoring system. Professional thoroughness that suggested she actually knew what she was looking at, unlike Tom Bradley's fake building inspection. "Mr. Sullivan, there are no health code violations here. This is a textbook example of proper home food preservation." "Then why the inspection?" Her face went red as a stop sign. The complaint mentioned commercial quantities, possible unlicensed food sales, potential health hazards, but this is clearly personal use storage. The mini twist came when I asked to see the complaint form. Brenda hesitated, then showed me her tablet. Anonymous complaint filed through the county website, but the timestamp showed it was submitted at 4:47 p.m. yesterday, exactly 30 minutes after I'd refused Patricia's request to survey my cellar for archaeological purposes. And Patricia wasn't even trying to hide her involvement anymore. She was getting desperate, throwing every government agency she could think of at my property, hoping something would stick long enough to justify seizure or condemnation. Brenda, what happens when people file false complaints with your department? Hypothetically, filing false reports with government agencies is a misdemeanor. Repeat offenses can become felonies. That evening, I sat on my back porch reviewing the week's escalation. Patricia had moved from bureaucratic harassment to psychological warfare, but she'd made a critical error. She was leaving digital fingerprints on every fake complaint. Time to start documenting Patricia's pattern for the prosecutor who'd eventually need this evidence. June brought Patricia's most dangerous escalation, turning my neighbors into unknowing weapons against me. The attack came during the monthly neighborhood barbecue at the community center. I'd been avoiding these social gatherings since Patricia's harassment started, but Diesel convinced me that hiding would only make her whisper campaign more effective. Brother, if you don't show up, she controls the narrative. Time to let folks see you're not the unstable veteran she's painting you as. The evening air smelled like charcoal and lighter fluid as neighbors gathered around picnic tables loaded with covered dishes. Normal suburban socializing, except for Patricia working the crowd like a politician campaigning for my destruction. I grabbed a beer and positioned myself where I could overhear her conversations. Patricia had refined her message since the Mrs. Henderson incident. No direct accusations, just concerned observations delivered with practiced sincerity. I'm worried about Mac's isolation. Spending all that time underground in his cellar can't be healthy for someone with his background. The violation notices were just standard HOA business, but his reaction was so intense, almost threatening. Randy's seen cases like this before. Veterans sometimes struggle with authority figures. It's not their fault, but it can escalate quickly. Pure poison wrapped in compassionate concern. Patricia was systematically destroying my reputation while positioning herself as the thoughtful neighbor worried about community safety. But she made one critical mistake. She tried to recruit Diesel. I watched from across the pavilion as Patricia approached my Marine buddy with her clipboard smile and concerned citizen act. Mr. Rodriguez, as Mac's closest friend, I'm sure you've noticed some changes in his behavior lately? Diesel's face went stone cold in a way that would make drill instructors proud. What kind of changes, ma'am? The obsession with that cellar, the hostility toward reasonable community standards. Randy thinks Mac might be struggling with some service-related issues. Lady, Mac Sullivan is one of the most stable people I know. What he's struggling with is you harassing him for building a root cellar on his own damn property. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the predator underneath the concerned neighbor act. I understand loyalty, Mr. Rodriguez, but sometimes we have to think about the greater good. The greater good? You mean your husband's development project? Her face went white as printer paper. Patricia thought her land grab scheme was secret, but Diesel had done his homework. Public record searches, permit applications, zoning requests, all the evidence was there for anyone who bothered to look. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Whitmore Holdings LLC has development applications pending for this entire block. Mac's property is the only holdout. Pretty convenient that he's suddenly having behavior problems that require HOA intervention. The conversation ended with Patricia retreating to the safety of her usual supporters, but the damage was done. Diesel's public confrontation had planted different seeds in neighborhood minds, questions about Patricia's motives instead of my stability. But Patricia's counterattack came swiftly and viciously. Monday morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed. Not random vandalism, precise cuts designed to cause slow leaks that would strand me miles from home. Professional sabotage that required knowledge of tire construction. No witnesses, no security cameras covering the street, no evidence except the obvious message: cross Patricia Whitmore and face consequences. I called the sheriff's office to file a report, but Deputy Williams just shrugged and handed me a case number. "Probably kids, Mr. Sullivan. Happens all the time in these subdivisions." Tuesday brought escalation to my VA benefits. I got a call from the regional office requesting updated disability assessments based on community concerns about behavioral changes. "Mr. Sullivan, we've received reports suggesting your service-connected disabilities might be affecting your ability to maintain stable housing arrangements." My hands started shaking, not from fear, but from pure rage. Patricia was trying to destroy my VA benefits, the lifeline that kept me housed and fed. If she could prove I was mentally unstable, she could trigger a competency review that might cost me everything. What reports? From who? The information came through official channels. County Commissioner's Office forwarded concerns from your homeowners association about potential safety issues. Patricia had weaponized Randy's political position to attack my federal benefits. This wasn't neighborhood harassment anymore. This was systematic destruction designed to force me into homelessness or institutionalization. But she'd finally made the mistake I'd been waiting for. She'd created a federal paper trail. Targeting a disabled veteran's benefits using false information is a federal crime. Patricia had just upgraded her harassment campaign from state misdemeanors to federal felonies. That evening, I called the one person who could help me document Patricia's escalating criminal behavior, attorney Sarah Finley at the Disabled Veterans Legal Aid Clinic. "Mr. Sullivan, what you're describing sounds like a coordinated campaign of harassment targeting your protected status. We need to get federal investigators involved before this escalates further." How much further can it escalate? People this desperate sometimes resort to direct action, physical confrontation, property damage, even violence. You need to be prepared for anything. I looked out my kitchen window at my root cellar, the symbol of my independence that Patricia was so determined to destroy. Time to stop playing defense and start setting the trap that would end Patricia Whitmore's reign of terror permanently. The breakthrough came on a sweltering Tuesday in late June, when Patricia's desperation finally forced her to reveal the true scope of her scheme. I was at the courthouse filing paperwork for my federal complaint when I overheard a conversation that changed everything. Patricia's voice, echoing from the planning office down the hall, discussing details she thought were private. Final approval depends on clearing the Sullivan property. The Seller Foundation interferes with the drainage easement for the entire development. I positioned myself near the water fountain where I could hear without being seen. Patricia was meeting with someone whose voice I didn't recognize. Professional, authoritative, definitely not local, Mrs. Whitmore, our investors have already committed $12 million to this project. If you can't deliver clear title to that central parcel, we'll need to explore other options. $12 million. Patricia wasn't just trying to flip my property for quick cash. She was the local coordinator for a massive development project that required my land to proceed. The veteran is proving more resistant than anticipated, but we have other strategies available. What kind of strategies? My husband's position provides certain advantages: code enforcement, health inspections, utility challenges. Plus, the veteran's disability makes him vulnerable to competency questions. The casual way she discussed destroying my life made my coffee taste like ashes. Patricia wasn't just greedy, she was sociopathic, willing to weaponize my service-connected injuries to steal my property for corporate profits. But the real revelation was still coming. The cellar is the primary obstacle. Remove that structure, and the drainage engineering becomes simple. We've identified several approaches: safety violations, environmental concerns, historical preservation conflicts. And if legal challenges don't work? Patricia's laugh was colder than winter wind. Rural areas have many accidents involving underground structures, gas leaks, foundation collapses, unfortunate incidents that require emergency demolition. She was talking about destroying my cellar and making it look like an accident. Insurance fraud, property destruction, maybe even attempted murder if I happened to be inside during her unfortunate incident. I recorded the next 10 minutes on my phone, capturing Patricia's detailed discussion of falsified inspection reports, bribed officials, and planned accidents that would eliminate the obstacles to her development project. When the meeting ended, I watched Patricia leave with a man in an expensive suit whose business card identified him as Regional Development Director for Marcus Capital Group, the kind of corporate predator that bulldozes entire communities for strip malls and parking lots. Back home, I researched Marcus Capital Group online. Their portfolio read like a horror story of rural destruction. Family farms turned into outlet malls, Historic neighborhoods demolished for chain restaurants, small-town America erased for corporate profit margins. Patricia wasn't just stealing my land. She was selling my community's soul to developers who would strip mine Millbrook Heights for every dollar they could extract. But she'd made one fatal error. She'd discussed criminal conspiracy in a government building where conversations aren't private and recording laws favor documentation of official misconduct. I had her confession to bribery, fraud, conspiracy, and planned property destruction. Federal prosecutors dream about evidence this clear and comprehensive. That evening, I called Attorney Finley with an update that changed everything. Mr. Sullivan, this recording is prosecutorial gold. Conspiracy, bribery, planned insurance fraud, federal civil rights violations. Patricia's looking at decades in federal prison. What about the development project? Dead in the water. No legitimate developer touches properties with federal criminal investigations attached. Marcus Capital will disappear faster than morning fog. But I wasn't done with Patricia yet. She'd spent months terrorizing me with the threat of losing my independence. Time to show her what losing everything actually looked like. Sarah, what would happen if Patricia tried to destroy my cellar herself? Breaking and entering, criminal mischief, vandalism, plus federal charges if she's targeting your disability accommodations. Why? Just planning ahead, Patricia's desperate enough to try anything now. I was right. 3 days later, Patricia made the mistake that would end her criminal career permanently. The trap I was about to set required precision, patience, and equipment that could document federal crimes in courtroom-quality detail. Thursday morning, I called Diesel with a shopping list that would make a surveillance professional proud. Brother, I need cameras that can record in total darkness, audio equipment that picks up whispers at 50 yards, and a remote locking system that can't be defeated with crowbars or bolt cutters. Mac, what kind of operation are we running here? The kind that puts Patricia Whitmore in federal prison for the next 20 years. We spent Thursday afternoon at electronics stores that catered to security professionals and private investigators. Hidden cameras smaller than quarters, infrared motion sensors that could detect a mouse at midnight, audio recorders with parabolic microphones designed for long-range surveillance. But the masterpiece was the electronic lock system. Military-grade deadbolts controlled by encrypted wireless signals, silent operation, steel construction that could stop a determined burglar with power tools. Once these deadbolts engage, the security dealer explained, the only way out is from the outside. Silent motor, hardened steel, designed for high-security applications where containment is critical. Perfect. If Patricia wanted to explore my cellar so badly, she could do it from the inside. Friday was installation day. Diesel arrived at dawn with equipment that belonged in a spy movie, and we transformed my property into a surveillance fortress. Primary cameras went in obvious locations. Patricia would spot these and probably try to disable them. But the real documentation would come from backup units hidden in tree hollows, birdhouses, even underground containers that recorded through fiber optic cables. 6 different angles on the cellar entrance, Diesel explained, adjusting the last hidden camera. Motion-activated, infrared-capable wireless upload to secure servers. She could bring a demolition crew and we'd still have prosecution-quality footage. The audio system was even more sophisticated. Directional microphones focused on the cellar entrance, backup recorders throughout my property, even vibration sensors that would detect footsteps or digging. If Patricia whispered her social security number, we'd record it clearly enough for voice analysis. But the electronic lock was the trap's killing stroke. We removed my cellar's original hardware and installed a system that looked identical from the outside but operated on principles Patricia couldn't imagine. The visible lock was just decoration. Real security came from steel deadbolts hidden inside the door frame, controlled by my smartphone from anywhere in the house. "Test it," Diesel said, handing me the phone app. I tapped the screen. The deadbolts engaged with a whisper-quiet thunk that you'd miss if you weren't listening for it. Tapped again, they retracted silently. What if someone's inside when I activate it? Then they're staying inside until you decide otherwise. These bolts are designed to contain people who really don't want to be contained. We tested the system a dozen times. Door opens normally, person enters cellar. I tap the app, deadbolts engage, person is trapped until I choose to release them. Simple, reliable, and completely invisible unless you knew what to look for. Saturday brought psychological preparation. I'd spent 6 months learning Patricia's patterns, understanding her motivations, predicting her next moves. But trapping someone in my cellar required a different mindset. Cold calculation instead of defensive reactions. I walked through the scenario repeatedly. Patricia breaks in, enters cellar. I lock her inside, call police, wait for arrest. Clean, legal, documented. No violence, no threats, just a homeowner detaining a criminal until authorities arrive. But Patricia's desperation was escalating towards something more dangerous than breaking and entering. Her conversation with Marcus Capital had revealed someone willing to commit serious crimes for corporate profits. I needed to be ready for anything. Sunday afternoon, I made the phone call that would seal Patricia's fate. "Patricia, this is Mac. I've been thinking about your offer to survey my cellar." Long pause. "What kind of thinking?" "Maybe we could work something out. Cash deal, no questions asked, but I want to understand what makes that cellar so valuable to your development friends." I could practically hear her brain spinning as greed warred with caution. "What makes you think there's anything valuable down there?" "Family stories, Patricia. Grandfather built it during the Depression. Chose that exact spot for reasons nobody talks about. Deep excavation, sealed sections, things he never opened before he died. Pure fiction." But Patricia's breathing changed as she imagined hidden treasure justifying months of harassment and legal risk. "I could arrange a professional assessment, archaeological consultants, structural engineers, full documentation for insurance purposes." "When?" "Soon, very soon. I'll call you." She hung up before I could respond, probably afraid I'd change my mind if we talked longer. Tuesday night, my motion sensors triggered at 11:23 p.m. Patricia's BMW cruising past for the third time that evening, slowing down as she studied my property like a general planning an assault. She was building courage for something bigger than violation notices and inspection threats. The trap was ready. All I had to do was wait for Patricia to spring it herself. Wednesday brought Patricia's most desperate gambit yet. Direct psychological warfare designed to break my will before she risked direct action. 6:30 a.m., my landline rang with a number I didn't recognize. Patricia's voice, but without the usual pretense of civility. "Mac, this is your last chance to do this the easy way." I was making coffee when the call came, grounds spilling across my counter as my hands went unsteady. 6 months of harassment had taught me to recognize Patricia's escalation patterns, but this felt different. Predatory desperation instead of bureaucratic bullying. "What easy way, Patricia?" "Sell. Today. Cash offer, clean transfer. You can keep your precious cellar as part of the deal. 300,000 final offer. 300,000 for property worth maybe 250 on a good day." Patricia was offering above market value, which meant her development deal was worth exponentially more than she was letting on. "That's generous. What's the catch?" "No catch, just tired of fighting over a patch of Kentucky dirt. Randy thinks we should move on to other projects." The lie was transparent as window glass. Randy's political career was finished, their development connections worthless without his official position. Patricia was staring at financial ruin unless she could deliver my property to Marcus Capital Group. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. Market conditions change quickly around here." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Patricia was done with legal harassment. Time for more direct persuasion methods. Thursday escalated to intimidation through official channels. I got a visit from Deputy Craig Williams, looking uncomfortable as a cat in a thunderstorm. "Mr. Sullivan, we've received reports of suspicious activity at your address. Possible weapons violations." The morning heat was already making my back porch concrete too hot to touch as Craig shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly delivering someone else's message. "What kind of suspicious activity?" "Anonymous tip about firearms being stored improperly on your property. Need to schedule a welfare check, make sure everything's secure." My blood pressure spiked like a rocket. Patricia was trying to get police involved as cover for whatever she was planning next. If cops were already investigating weapons violations, any violence at my property could be blamed on the unstable veteran with his illegal gun collection. "Craig, what's your protocol for anonymous weapons tips?" "Well, we investigate all reports of potential safety issues." "And who's pushing for this investigation?" His face flushed red as autumn leaves. "Request came through the county commissioner's office. Standard procedure for public safety concerns." Randy's final official act before losing his position. Weaponizing law enforcement against his wife's harassment target. Patricia was using every remaining connection to set up justification for whatever crime she was planning. But Friday brought the revelation that changed everything. Patricia wasn't planning to hire professionals anymore. She was going to handle the problem personally. I was testing my security cameras when my neighbor Mrs. Finley approached, looking worried enough to make me pour an extra cup of coffee. Mac, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I overheard something at the grocery store yesterday. What kind of something? Patricia was talking to her sister about your cellar. Said she was going to settle this herself since the legal options weren't working fast enough. The afternoon sun beat down like a hammer as Mrs. Finley delivered Patricia's confessions secondhand. She mentioned having the keys to your cellar, knowing when you'd be asleep, taking care of the problem before her development partners got impatient. Keys to my cellar? Patricia must have been planning this for weeks, maybe getting copies made during one of her fake inspections or finding a way to duplicate my lock during her surveillance drives. Did she say when? Soon. Maybe this weekend. She seemed desperate, Mac, like someone who'd run out of options. That evening, I called Attorney Finley with an update that made federal prosecution look inevitable. Mr. Sullivan, Patricia's moved from harassment to planning breaking and entering. Combined with her recorded conspiracy confession, we're looking at a federal RICO case, organized criminal enterprise using official corruption for private profit. What should I expect? Someone this desperate doesn't think rationally. She's facing decades in prison if caught, so the risk-reward calculation favors extreme measures. Be ready for anything. Saturday night, I sat in my kitchen reviewing security monitors, coffee growing cold as I watched Patricia's BMW make its fourth drive-by of the evening. Each pass was slower, more deliberate, like she was memorizing details for something bigger than surveillance. At 11:15 p.m., she parked 2 blocks away and walked back on foot, staying in shadows, testing my cellar door with what looked like a key ring. She'd found a way to bypass my locks, or thought she had. But Patricia didn't know about the electronic deadbolts hidden inside the door frame, controlled by my smartphone, completely invisible from outside inspection. Sunday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Mac, it's Patricia. Change of plans on the cellar survey. Tonight works better. Cooler temperatures, better working conditions for the equipment. What time? Late. Maybe 2 or 3 a.m. I'll handle everything personally this time. She hung up before I could respond, probably afraid I'd ask too many questions about her sudden preference for middle-of-the-night property inspections. I spent Sunday afternoon in my cellar making sure everything was ready. The preserved food gleamed in neat rows, 2 years of careful work representing security and independence. But tonight, my root cellar was going to serve a different purpose. Tonight, it was going to be Patricia Whitmore's cage. Sunday night felt like the calm before a hurricane, oppressive heat hanging over Millbrook Heights like a wool blanket, while Patricia prepared for her final assault on my independence. I spent the evening checking systems one last time. Cameras recording in perfect clarity, audio capturing whispers at 50 yards, electronic locks responding instantly to smartphone commands. 2 years of planning had led to this moment. Patricia Whitmore was about to walk into the most sophisticated trap a disabled Marine could devise. 10:30 p.m. brought the first confirmation. Motion sensor alert as a figure moved across Mrs. Finley's backyard, staying in shadows, carrying something metallic that caught streetlight reflections. Through infrared cameras, I watched Patricia conduct final reconnaissance. Dark clothing instead of designer outfits, hair pulled back under a baseball cap, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd rehearsed this operation multiple times. She spent 10 minutes studying my cellar entrance, testing the lock mechanism with what appeared to be a key ring, checking sight lines to my house for potential witnesses. Professional-level preparation for a crime she'd obviously planned down to the smallest detail. But Patricia made one critical error. She was so focused on the visible lock that she never noticed the hidden deadbolts installed inside the doorframe. 11:45 p.m., she retreated to her staging area. I watched her sit in her BMW for 20 minutes, engine running, clearly building courage for something that would either solve her financial problems or destroy her life completely. At 12:15 a.m., she made a phone call. I couldn't hear the conversation, but her body language suggested she was reporting to someone, probably her development partners, confirming the timeline for removing the final obstacle to their $12 million project. 1:30 a.m. brought the psychological preparation phase. Patricia got out of her car and paced the community center parking lot, talking to herself, working through whatever justification she'd created for breaking into my property. Through directional microphones, I caught fragments. Paranoid veteran, hiding something valuable, just going to look, not really stealing. Patricia was convincing herself that breaking into my cellar wasn't a real crime, just a necessary investigation of suspicious activity by an unstable neighbor. The self-deception was almost impressive. 2:00 a.m. she made her approach. I was sitting in my kitchen, wide awake, coffee cup warming my hands while I watched security monitors show Patricia creeping across my property like a common burglar. No backup, no partners, just a desperate real estate agent with bolt cutters and a flashlight, gambling everything on one last attempt to steal my independence. 2:15 a.m. she reached the cellar entrance and began working on the visible lock. The sound of metal cutting metal echoed through the night air as Patricia destroyed my decoy padlock, unaware that real security lay hidden in systems she couldn't see or understand. Through hidden cameras, I watched her examine the door after cutting through my fake lock. It opened easily, revealing wooden steps leading down into darkness. Cool air drifted up from below, carrying the earthy smell of preserved food and settled dust. Patricia stood at the threshold for a long moment, flashlight beam dancing across the stairs. Even through infrared video, I could see her hands shaking slightly. Breaking and entering was probably new territory for someone accustomed to legal harassment and bureaucratic corruption. But greed overcame caution. She tucked the bolt cutters under her arm and started down the stairs, designer shoes clicking on wood with each careful step. 2:17 a.m., Patricia disappeared into my cellar, flashlight beam sweeping across rows of mason jars like she was searching for the treasure she'd convinced herself was hidden there. I watched her move through my carefully organized food supplies, opening storage boxes, checking behind shelving units, even tapping walls looking for hidden compartments. The audio picked up her breathing, quick and shallow, adrenaline mixing with excitement as she imagined discovering whatever valuable secret justified months of harassment. "Where is it?" she muttered, growing frustrated after 10 minutes of fruitless searching. "Has to be something. Nobody fights this hard over fucking vegetables." That's when I reached for my phone and opened the lock control app. Through the security feed, I watched Patricia continue her treasure hunt, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. She'd spent 6 months terrorizing me with threats of losing my home, my independence, my dignity. Time to show her what losing everything actually felt like. I positioned my finger over the electronic lock control, watching Patricia rifle through my preserved tomatoes like a common thief searching for jewelry. One tap would trap her in my cellar until police arrived. One tap would end her reign of terror permanently. One tap would prove that disabled veterans don't just disappear when neighborhood bullies want their property. Patricia Whitmore had spent months learning that actions have consequences. Tonight, she was about to get her masterclass in cause and effect. I tapped the screen. Steel deadbolts slid home with a whisper-quiet thunk. The trap had sprung. 2:47 a.m. The moment of perfect justice arrived with the soft mechanical whisper of deadbolts engaging. Patricia was officially trapped in my root cellar, surrounded by the preserved vegetables she'd tried to force me to destroy, breathing the earthy air of independence she'd spent 6 months trying to steal from me. I sat back in my kitchen chair, taking a slow sip of coffee, and waited for her to discover what had happened. It took exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The first sound was her footsteps on the stairs, quick and confident as she headed for what she thought was an easy exit. Then silence as she reached the door and pushed against it, then pushed harder. "What the hell?" Through crystal-clear audio, I heard Patricia's confidence turn to confusion, then confusion to the first edge of real panic. She threw her shoulder against the door, but steel deadbolts don't care how important you think you are. "Hello? Hello! The door is stuck!" I finished my coffee and poured another cup. No hurry. Patricia had spent months making my life hell. She could spend a few minutes contemplating the consequences of her choices. "Mac! Mac Sullivan! I know you're up there!" Her voice cracked with genuine fear as she realized this wasn't a mechanical failure. Someone had deliberately trapped her in this underground space, and that someone was the disabled veteran she'd been terrorizing for half a year. "Let me out! This is kidnapping! False imprisonment!" Actually, it was citizen's arrest of a criminal caught in the act of breaking and entering on my property. But I didn't feel like explaining legal technicalities to someone pounding on my cellar door like a caged animal. The pounding continued for 15 minutes. Patricia alternating between demanding release, threatening lawsuits, and trying to negotiate her way out of the hole she'd literally dug for herself. "Mac, I can explain. This is all a misunderstanding. I was checking for structural damage." At 3:15 a.m., with bolt cutters in her hands and my destroyed padlock as evidence, she was really going with misunderstanding as her defense strategy. Patricia's sense of entitlement was truly spectacular. "My husband will have the FBI here within an hour. You can't hold a county commissioner's wife." Former county commissioner. And his political connections wouldn't save Patricia from felony breaking and entering charges, especially when documented by surveillance footage that could make CSI investigators jealous. 3:30 a.m. brought the bargaining phase. "I'll drop all the HOA violations, clean slate, we can forget this whole thing." Forget 6 months of harassment, forget the fraudulent inspection reports, forget her conspiracy with Marcus Capital Group to steal my property. Patricia's definition of forgetting was impressively self-serving. 3:45 a.m. brought the first real breakdown. "Please, Mac, I'm sorry. I know I went too far. I was just trying to help the neighborhood. Please let me out." The audio picked up something I'd never heard from Patricia before: genuine human emotion. Fear was stripping away her armor of entitlement, revealing the scared, middle-aged woman underneath the neighborhood dictator. But even in her panic, Patricia couldn't stop lying. "I wasn't going to take anything. I just wanted to see what was down there. You made it sound so mysterious." She still thought I was stupid enough to believe she'd broken into my property with bolt cutters just to satisfy curiosity. Even trapped and terrified, she couldn't resist trying to manipulate the situation. 4 a.m. was decision time. I could keep her trapped until sunrise, let her stew in complete psychological breakdown for another few hours. Part of me wanted to see how many secrets she'd confess when she thought she might die in my root cellar. But Patricia had learned her lesson. Time to call in the professionals. I dialed the non-emergency number for Kentucky State Police, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. "This is Marcus Sullivan at 247 Oak Ridge Drive in Millbrook Heights. I need to report a breaking and entering." "Are you in immediate danger, sir?" "No, ma'am. The intruder broke into my root cellar about an hour ago. I've secured the area and contained the situation, but I need an officer to take custody." "You've contained the intruder?" "Yes, ma'am. Electronic lock system engaged when they entered without permission. They can't escape, but they're not in any danger. Just inconvenienced until law enforcement arrives." Brief pause as the dispatcher processed that information. "Sir, you're saying you've locked someone in your basement?" "Root cellar, ma'am, and they locked themselves in when they broke into my property with bolt cutters. I just made sure they couldn't leave the scene before you folks could sort things out." "Officer en route. ETA 12 minutes." I hung up and activated the cellar's intercom system, another feature installed for exactly this moment. "Patricia." The pounding stopped immediately. Mac, thank God, let me out." "Police are on their way. Should be here in about 10 minutes. You might want to use that time thinking about what you're going to tell them about why you're in my cellar with burglary tools at 4 a.m. Long silence. Then, "Mac, we can work this out. Whatever you want, money, property, I'll drop everything permanently." "Too late for negotiations, Patricia. You crossed the line when you broke into my home." "It's not your home, it's just a fucking cellar." Even trapped and panicked, Patricia couldn't resist minimizing her crime. Breaking into a mere cellar somehow wasn't as serious as breaking into a house, in her entitled mind. At 4:11 a.m., red and blue lights painted my driveway in alternating colors as Kentucky State Police arrived to collect my gift. Justice was about to be served. Ice cold. Officer Sarah Martinez stepped out of the patrol car looking like she'd handled plenty of strange situations, but maybe never one quite like this. "Mr. Sullivan, you're saying someone broke into your cellar and you locked them inside?" "Yes, ma'am. She's been harassing me for 6 months, trying to force me off my property. Tonight she escalated to breaking and entering. I've got the whole thing recorded in multiple angles." "And this person isn't injured?" "No, ma'am. Just inconvenienced. Cellar's got proper ventilation, comfortable temperature, plenty of food and water. She's safer in there than running around loose with bolt cutters." Officer Martinez walked to the cellar entrance where Patricia's muffled voice could be heard pleading for release. "Ma'am, this is Kentucky State Police. Are you injured?" "No, I'm not injured. This psycho veteran locked me in here. I want him arrested for kidnapping." "Ma'am, what's your name and why were you on this property?" "Patricia Whitmore. My husband is county commissioner. This is completely illegal." Officer Martinez turned to me with raised eyebrows. "County commissioner's wife?" "Former commissioner. He resigned last month before ethics charges. And yes, that's Patricia Whitmore, my HOA president who's been filing false violation reports for 6 months." I handed her my phone with security footage ready to play. "Everything's documented. Her approach, cutting my lock, entering without permission, searching my storage, clear breaking and entering with burglary tools. The officer watched 3 minutes of crystal clear evidence. Patricia's crime was documented from multiple angles, with audio of her muttering about paranoid veterans and searching for imaginary treasure. This is very comprehensive documentation, Mr. Sullivan. I believe in being thorough, ma'am. 20 minutes later, my driveway looked like a crime scene. 2 patrol cars, sergeant's vehicle, even a detective called in because of Patricia's political connections. But all the connections in Kentucky couldn't erase video evidence of felony breaking and entering. I unlocked the cellar with a tap on my phone. The door swung open and Patricia emerged like a creature from a nightmare movie. Her designer clothes were wrinkled and dirty from crawling around my cellar floor. Perfect hair disheveled, expensive makeup streaked with tears and sweat. But the best detail was the smell. Patricia reeked of preserved onions and pickled beets. 2 hours trapped among the vegetables she'd tried to destroy. "Arrest him!" she screamed, pointing with a shaking finger. "False imprisonment! Kidnapping!" Sergeant Williams looked at the bolt cutters in Patricia's hand, then at the destroyed padlock, then at my calm demeanor as I stood in my bathrobe holding coffee. "Ma'am, I need you to drop those tools and calm down." Detective Reynolds stepped forward. Tired-looking man who'd seen every variation of human stupidity. "Mrs. Whitmore, why were you on Mr. Sullivan's property at 3 a.m. with burglary equipment?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her backup story crumbled under the weight of video evidence showing her cutting my lock and entering without permission. "He invited me. He said there were valuable things hidden in his cellar." I played the recording of yesterday's phone call. Patricia's voice, clear as crystal. "Late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. I'll handle everything personally this time." "Patricia Whitmore," Officer Martinez announced. "You're under arrest for breaking and entering, criminal mischief, and possession of burglary tools." The handcuffs clicked shut with the most satisfying sound I'd heard in 6 months. 6 weeks later, Patricia pled guilty to felony breaking and entering. 18 months in state prison, 5 years probation, $25,000 restitution. Her real estate license was revoked, business collapsed, marriage ended when Randy discovered her development scheme had destroyed his political career. The neighborhood transformed overnight. Without Patricia's reign of terror, people started acting like neighbors instead of subjects. Maria Santos became HOA president, governing by consensus instead of clipboard tyranny. My root cellar became a local landmark where kids learned about food preservation and standing up to bullies. But the real victory was personal. Patricia had spent months trying to prove that a disabled veteran couldn't defend his independence against money and political connections. She was wrong. Spectacularly wrong. My root cellar still smells like preserved vegetables and self-reliance. Patricia's prison cell probably smells like institutional disinfectant and regret. Some lessons are best learned the hard way. So here's my advice. If you're facing your own neighborhood tyrant, document everything. Know your rights. Build alliances. And remember that bullies eventually reveal who they really are. Drop your wildest HOA story below, because every experience helps someone else realize they're not alone in fighting suburban terrorism. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about ordinary people who refuse to bow down to petty dictators.